Hi, and welcome back. So, this is the last part of our lecture on agriculture. Now, in the previous slides, we have seen the benefits of agriculture, and that is, it enabled us to sustain a growing population that we are now. Since the agriculture revolution, our society has become more complex, has made some advances in sciences, in navigation, in trade, etc. By the way, if you want to know more about agriculture and its impact on society, I would highly recommend that you read this very thought-provoking and very insightful book by Yuval Noah Harari, Sapiens. It talks about the effect of or the impact of agriculture on human society. Now, um, that's that's the thing. That's the topic that we're going to look at: the impact of agriculture to society. So we have seen that population and income growth means increase in demand for food and agricultural products. So this has been going on for a long time, and we will look now at the impact of this um, process. And we will look at two impacts. We have a global scale impact of agriculture and the regional impact of agriculture. Okay, so global impact. And we are probably, most of us are aware of this already, that agriculture has contributed to an increase in atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide through deforestation. Lands, forest has been cleared for plantation, and that contributed to the release of carbon dioxide in the air, in the atmosphere. And also, we have seen an increase in the amount of nitrous oxide in the atmosphere from crop production. And if we look at this table from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, or FAO, we can see here a summary of the contribution of agriculture to global greenhouse gases and other emissions. So we have greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, nitric oxides, and ammonia, and their main effects. So these three, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, they all contributed to climate change in a global scale. And these two as well, acidification, but nitric oxide and ammonia, their contribution is more of acidification and eutrophication. Now let's look at where does each of these greenhouse gases come from. Carbon dioxide is mainly from land use change, especially deforestation. Methane is from cattle, the ruminants, rice production, biomass burning. Nitrous oxide, you have livestock, from fertilizer, and of course burning. These two are quite similar. They're both from mineral fertilizers, burning, and livestock. And you can see down here the percentages of their contribution to the total man-made sources of each of the greenhouse gases. For example, 15% of all the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is contributed by agriculture. Like 93% of ammonia released to the environment is from agriculture. So we can see here the huge impact on a global scale of agriculture. Now we have regional impact because in different regions, you have different problems, you have different issues, you have different level of agricultural activity. So they have, so the impacts vary. So these are some of the impacts that the FAA have seen in different regions around the world. So you have loss of and competition for good arable land. Like, I think this is seen in developing countries that are populous. So you have many people. Of course, people need a space for their houses, and that competes with agriculture, because if you have increasing number of people, there's increasing demand for food, and you need space for planting of your crops, but also you need space for people to live in. So that's it's hard to balance between that. Then aside from that, you have land degradation, which involves soil erosion, the loss of the productivity of land because of overuse. You have water pollution, leaching from the fertilizer, no, leaching of nitrate into the soil surface, and even the groundwater, which is used as drinking water in some areas in the world. And of course, the loss of biological and ecological diversity because of the destruction of the habitats. Now, one example, I guess, is this Southeast Asian haze. If you still remember this one, this was back in 2015 when there was a very extensive haze all over Southeast Asia because of the burning of peatlands, of, of unwanted vegetation in Indonesia. And this has affected several countries in Southeast Asia: Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, southern Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and the Philippines. And Indonesia, where the source of this haze was coming from, it affected them for several months from June to October. 6 provinces in Indonesia have been declared have declared the state of emergency. Now in Kalimantan, which is in Borneo, the Borneo part of Indonesia, the pollutant standard index was recorded 1,801. And what does it mean? If you look at the PSI, or the pollutant standard index here of Singapore, 1,801 is in this category. It's more than, it's way, way, way beyond this one, 300. And so 1,801 based on this um, table is very hazardous. So people may experience more serious health effects. So this is a photograph, an aerial photo by NASA, and the white stuff there is not clouds. There, that's the haze coming from the smoke. Yeah, you can see here in this box here, you can see fire burning and emitting smoke, and the smoke is just spreading throughout Southeast Asia. So this is Sumatra Island, which is in Indonesia. This is Borneo, and you can see how it is spreading through Asia. This is another photo. This is Sumatra, a closer look of Sumatra, and you can see red lines that indicates high temperature. So that's those spots have fire. So these places are on fire. We're on fire and emitting this extensive smoke all over Asia. Now they have attributed this to the burning of peats, swamps, and some old vegetation, which they are clearing for palm oil plantation. So this plant has been very infamous because of that link. Many forests, tracts of land have been burned down just to give way for this plant. And because of that, there is a movement to ban all products that contain palm oil. Palm oil is the most used oil globally. It's used in a lot of products that we consume, from biscuits to cookies to butter to candies, toothpaste, chocolates, even sodas, cosmetic products, even your cereal breakfast, powdered milk, shampoo. All of this contain palm oil, and you can check that. In the products that you have at home, check the ingredients. You would most likely find palm oil that. So there was a movement to boycott all these products that use palm oil to reduce, um, you know, um, extensive clearing of forests and giving way to palm oil plantation. And that is the clearing of forests for palm oil plantation has also been affecting orangutans, the habitats of orangutan. They live in forests, and you clear that up, and that's endangering orangutans. And there has been a movement to support companies that are using sustainable palm oil. So those, when you say sustainable palm oil, it means it uses a sustainable program. That means it includes the environment. The practices are environment friendly. So those are that's one of the principles behind the sustainable palm oil. And they're saying that we don't need to stop using palm oil because it's very important. Um, but there are companies who are very ethical and they practice sustainable palm oil farming. So it's saying, so to look for the seal or for this logo, so that you would know if that product is manufactured by a company who is very responsible and very ethical and practices sustainable palm oil farming. And speaking of sustainability, of course, agriculture will not be gone in anytime soon because that's the one feeding us. That's how our civilization was built on. So the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, is advocating, is telling people to advocate for sustainable agricultural development. So how do they define a sustainable agricultural development? What is a sustainable agriculture? So it is defined here as the management and conservation of the natural resource base and orientation of technological change in such a manner as to ensure attainment of continued satisfaction of human needs for present and future generations. So these are some buzzwords that they use. No, so you have conservation, management. You have the use of technology to provide sustainable um, agricultural practices, and you also have the satisfaction or supplying the needs of the society, of human society, not only now but also people in the future. Also, they define sustainable agriculture as the one that conserves land, water, plant, and animal genetic resources, is environmentally non-degrading, technically appropriate, economically viable, and socially acceptable. So it's very inclusive now. It touches all sectors of the society, and it's very holistic. So that's agriculture development. So it's very broad, you know. So people are encouraged to align their values with this one because it's sustainable. So what's an example? So FAO gave an example. So they have seen this practice in Southeast Asia. It's called traditional aquaculture in rice-based farm. So it's a traditional aquaculture in rice-based farming system. So what's in here? What's in this system? So they have found that this system increases productivity of rice without the use of fertilizers because the nutrient availability is increased and it is provided by the fish, the fish pond. And they have seen that rice fish farmers actually enjoy higher incomes than those who produce only rice because you have a fish pond and at the same time you have a rice plantation. So it's a win-win thing. And apart from the rice, the fish that you get from the pond, it provides a readily available source of protein, fatty acids, and micronutrients that are especially needed by children and pregnant women. And we know, and another thing, we know in Southeast Asia, malaria is a problem. So fish that lives in the pond, that is cultivated in the pond, offers biological control of mosquitoes. And fish also feed on snails, weeds, and insects in the rice fields, and that eliminates or reduces the need for pesticide. And these pesticides affects water quality because it's a it the residues, they are pollutant. So this is just one example. And to end this short lecture, I'll leave you with this video, which is about the bees and why are they dying. And I want you to find the connection between agriculture, the bees, and food security. So let's play this video now.
A single honeybee weighs just 1/10 of a gram, but a beehive is worth more than its weight in gold. Crops pollinated by bees are worth $215 billion worldwide, and those bees provide us with 75% of the fruits, veggies, and nuts that we eat. Their pollinating services are worth at least $24 billion to US farmers, but that's probably an underestimate. Bees also pollinate the coffee plant. That might be the most critical job on Earth. One could say that bees are the bee's knees. To say that bees are important would be like saying Beyonce is a pretty good singer. Incidentally, she has a bee impersonating fly named after her. When people talk about bee death, they're usually talking about the European honeybee. Cue the bee roll, please. This one species is basically a domesticated animal, just like cows, sheep, or chickens, taken from the wild, put in a box, and used to harvest honey and pollinate crops. Each winter, it's normal for a small fraction of colonies to die off, but between 1947 and 2005, US beekeepers lost nearly half their bees. By 2006, beekeepers were reporting losses as high as 90%, and this honeybee apocalypse was given a name: colony collapse disorder. Talk about a buzzkill.
Too soon.
A hive that falls victim to CCD is like a ghost town. No adult worker bees, the honey and immature young left behind. It's pretty much just a lonely queen wandering around like her friends stranded her at the party. But honeybees' wild, solo living cousins are in trouble too. It's estimated that over the past 120 years, as many as half of all wild bee species have gone extinct. Bee die-offs have been reported as far back as 1868, but as far as we know, they've never happened on this scale before, and we're not entirely sure what's causing it. Pesticides are one of the likely culprits, particularly a class of chemicals called neonicotinoids. Feeding on neonicotinated food can be deadly to bees, and even at non-lethal doses, bees can lose the ability to communicate and forage. In some places, there's just not as many flowers as there used to be. Like humans, bees do best when they eat a balanced diet from many different sources. But thanks to habitat loss, we're giving them a buffet with just a few choices, and it's definitely not all you can eat. And just because they're small doesn't mean that bees can't get sick. When a colony is weakened by pesticides or lack of food, they become more vulnerable to viruses, parasites, and all kinds of other infections, like these blood-sucking mites, which, judging from their name, I'm guessing are pretty bad. Now, these bacteria can turn larvae into liquid, and these parasites lay eggs inside the bees' breathing tubes, suffocating them to death. Turns out some bees are naturally resistant to some of these infections though, so scientists are trying to breed entire colonies that can fight off these microscopic horrors. According to a 2015 study in the journal Science, it's likely that instead of one culprit, bee declines are being driven by a perfect storm of troubles: pesticides, habitat loss, and infections. But there are possible solutions, and all of us can do our part. We can plant more flowers in more places, reduce our use of pesticides, keep out those invasive species, and take better care of our wild bees. And most of all, we all need to keep an eye on our relationship with nature, whether it's in the garden or the grocery store. The Belgian writer Maurice Maeterlinck wrote in 1901, "You will probably more than once have seen her fluttering about the bushes in a deserted corner of your garden without realizing that you were carelessly watching the venerable ancestor to whom we probably owe most of our flowers and fruits, and possibly even our civilization." As William Shakespeare once said, "To be or not to be." To be. Stay curious. Here's a riddle. Roses are red, violets are blue, flowers need bees, bees need flowers too. These two branches